The storm never killed the Quonset hut. In 80 years of hurricanes, blizzards, and Pacific typhoons, it almost never killed one. There is a photograph from the spring of 1961. A man named Harlan Beck stands inside a steel arch building with a flashlight, pointing at the bottom 2 feet of the wall. The steel above his hand is bright and clean. The steel below it is the color of a burnt biscuit, and a dark seam runs the length of the floor where the wood met the metal. He is not pointing at storm damage. That building never lost a panel, never lost a bolt, never wrinkled in a gale. He is pointing at 11 years of his own breath. Harlan bought that hut surplus in 1950 and set it up for a dairy. He did everything a careful man does. He caulked every seam. He sealed the ridge. And the first cold October, he closed the louvers in the end walls and screwed them shut because he was keeping the weather out. That is what killed it. A tight building is a dry building. It is the most reasonable sounding sentence in American construction, and it has rotted more steel arch buildings in this country than every hurricane on record. What nobody told Harlan was that the Navy had already solved this in their own drawings. The louvers he screwed shut were not decoration. They were the machine. There are 6 things that rot a steel building. 5 of them are water. The 6th is a sentence somebody told you, and it does the most damage of all. We will not get to it until the end, because you will not believe it until you have seen the other 5. Tap subscribe first, not for me. We pull one buried skill back into daylight a week now, and you will want the next one. Leak 1 is the sky. Rain, snow, wind-driven water at the fasteners. I will be honest with you before I take anything away, because the sky gets all the attention and almost never wins. The design came out of Quonset Point, Rhode Island in 1941. The Navy gave the George A. Fuller Construction Company 60 days to produce a building 10 untrained men could raise in a day with hand tools. Fuller's people took Major Peter Neeson's corrugated arch, built for the Royal Engineers on the Western Front in 1916, and re-engineered it for mass production. Somewhere between 150,000 and 170,000 went out the door to the Aleutians and to Guam. Same shell, same bolts. An arch has no wall to roof joint, the exact seam where a conventional house tears itself apart, so the wind finds nothing to grab and the snow nothing to sit on. 7 originals still stand at the CB Museum in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. The Army still runs them near the Korean DMZ. 80 years of weather and the tin held, friend. So when a man blames the storm, look at where the metal died. Corrosion high on the arch, spreading down from a fastener near the ridge, is a roof leak, and that is a real problem with a real answer. $9 of butyl tape in an afternoon. But if the ridge is bright and the floor line is dark, the sky did not do that. Something inside did. The failure mode is the man who spends $4,000 on an elastomeric roof coating for a building whose roof was never the problem. He seals the top, feels better for a season, and the next spring the sill is worse. Do this today. Walk your building at first light and look at where the rust lives, top or bottom. That costs you nothing, and it tells you which of the 6 you are fighting. Top rust is weather. Bottom rust is you. Leak 2 is the breath of the people inside, and this is the one that ate Harlan Beck's dairy. Here is the detail everyone missed. A building does not need a hole in the roof to fill with water, neighbor. It only needs occupants. The Department of Energy's building science people put the number in writing. An ordinary family of 4 puts 2 to 4 gallons of water into the air of its own house every day. Breathing, cooking, washing, mopping, drying laundry. Nobody spills it. It leaves the body and the kettle as vapor and goes looking for somewhere to land. In a steel building, it always finds the same place. Steel does not insulate. A galvanized panel has almost no resistance to heat, so on a 20-degree night, the inside face of that panel is close to 20 degrees. Now run the arithmetic any heating engineer runs. Air at 70 degrees holding 50% relative humidity reaches its dew point right around 50 degrees. Any surface colder than that and the water lands on it. Your arch is 30 degrees below the dew point. The whole ceiling is a condensing coil. ASHRAE, the society that writes the psychrometric standards your heating contractor works to, has had those tables in print for generations. That is not a mountain rumor. That is the same body that designs hospital ventilation, confirming in a chart what a man with a wet hand on a cold barn roof already knew. In a dairy, it is worse because a cow gives off water all day. In a shop, it is worse because a kerosene salamander or an unvented propane heater makes roughly a gallon of water for every gallon of fuel it burns. The heater you bought to dry the shop out is a water pump, friend, and nobody at the counter mentioned it. Warm air, cold steel, and nowhere to go. The condensation forms on the inside of the arch overnight, runs the curve, and collects where the steel meets the wood. The failure mode is the man who sees the drip and calls a roofer. He is looking up for a hole that is not there, while the water is manufactured 6 feet under his own nose. Do this today. Buy a hygrometer, $11. Set it in the middle of the building and read it at dawn, when the steel is coldest and the air is stillest. Above 60% relative humidity in cold weather, you are making rain indoors, and you have been for years. $11 meter or $4,000 of remediation. I have watched neighbors choose wrong. Leak 3 is the ground, and this is where the surplus buyers made the mistake the Navy never made, neighbor. Pull the original drawings and look at the floor. Tongue and groove plywood on wood joists, raised off the dirt with open air moving underneath. Above that, wood fiber insulation between the steel and a masonite lining. Every one of those materials passes vapor. The building was built to let water out on purpose. Then the war ended. The Navy sold the huts for about $1,000 each, and a returning veteran hauled one home and poured a concrete slab under it, because a slab is cheaper than a floor system. He did not know that a bare slab on grade is a wick. Groundwater climbs it and evaporates off the top into the room every hour for the life of the building. The industry eventually wrote the fix down as ASTME 1745, the polyethylene vapor retarder that belongs under the slab. 10 mils, lapped and taped, and the wick stops for pennies a square foot. Nobody put it under Harlan Beck's floor because in 1950 he could not have bought it. Now, here is where the wood dies. The USDA Forest Products Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin, has been running these numbers since 1910, and their wood handbook is plain. Decay fungi need wood moisture above roughly 20% to establish and keep eating. Below that, the fungus starves and the timber sits for 200 years. Above it, the timber is a meal. That is the whole science of rot in one number. Not termites, not age, not bad lumber. That is the federal government, neighbor, confirming what your great-grandfather knew when he set his sill on flat rocks with a gap of air underneath. Under 20%, wood waits. Over 20%, wood feeds. The failure mode is the sill plate you cannot see. It hides under the base channel, behind the trim, so the building looks fine for 9 years and fails in the 10th all at once. The owner says it failed suddenly. It had been failing since the pour. Do this today for about $4. There is a real test with a standard number on it, ASTMD4263, the plastic sheet method. Tape an 18-inch square of clear plastic to the concrete. Seal all 4 edges. Leave it overnight. If there is condensation under it in the morning or the concrete beneath has gone dark, your slab is pumping water into your building, and no amount of caulk outside will ever touch it. $4 of plastic against $9,000 of sill and floor replacement. That is the trade. Pattern break. Everything so far you could have worked out standing in the building with a flashlight. What comes next is where good intentions did the damage, and it is where the money is. If this is useful, subscribe. One of these a week. Step back a moment because by the 1970s, this stopped being about huts. Leak 4 is the air gap, the modern failure your grandfather never had the chance to make. A man reads about condensation, understands he needs insulation, and staples fiberglass bats between the ribs of the arch. The building is warmer. 2 winters later, he pulls a panel down, and it comes away black and sodden, the steel behind it scaled with rust. He did not stop the condensation, neighbor. He moved it somewhere he cannot see. Fiberglass stops neither air nor vapor. Warm, wet indoor air walks through the bat, reaches the cold steel, and condenses exactly as before, except now in a dark cavity with no air movement and a blanket holding it against the metal. He has built a poultice. The second version is worse. He wraps the bat in plastic on the room side. There is already a facing on the other side, and the water cannot leave in either direction. 2 vapor barriers, 1 assembly. Department of Energy guidance has been consistent for decades. A vapor retarder belongs on one side, the warm and winter side, and only one. An assembly has to be able to dry towards something. What works on an arch is removing the cold surface entirely, which is why closed-cell foam sprayed straight onto the inside of the steel, adhered with no gap behind it, succeeds where bats fail. No airspace for vapor to reach means no plane where it can condense. That is the same principle as the Navy's wood fiber sandwich, done with better chemistry. The old assembly and the new one agree. It was the 40 years in the middle that got people hurt. The failure mode is the bat with a gap. If you can slide a pencil between your insulation and the metal, you have not insulated that building. You have upholstered the problem. Do this today. Pull one panel of interior lining in a corner where nobody will care, and put your hand on the back of the insulation and on the steel behind it. Damp anywhere or discolored anywhere, and you have found your failure. 20 minutes, $8 and fasteners to put it back. Leak 5 is the base channel, the 2 inches nobody looks at. Water obeys the arch. It condenses at the top, runs the curve, and arrives at the bottom where the steel meets the sill. That junction is a trough, friend. It stays wet longer than anywhere else in the building because it is shaded, because it is still, and because air does not move down there. Still, trapped moisture is what actually kills galvanized steel. The American Galvanizers Association documents this and gives it a name: wet storage stain. It happens when galvanized surfaces sit close together in the presence of moisture with no air circulation. Zinc that survives decades of rain and salt spray in the open corrodes fast in the dark where the air is dead. The coating does not fail because water touched it. It fails because the water then had nowhere to go. That is this entire video in one industrial footnote. Zinc does not fear rain. Zinc fears stillness. So the rot line in every failed hut in America is the same. Bottom 2 feet of the arch, the fasteners along the base, the sill plate, the first 4 inches of floor. Bright metal above, dead metal below, and an owner insisting it was a storm. The failure mode is the caulk bead at the base. A man sees moisture low on the wall, assumes it is coming from outside, friend, and runs a continuous bead of sealant along the base channel. He has just sealed the only drainage path the building had. The trough becomes a bathtub. Do this today. Take a screwdriver to the base channel and probe. If the metal flexes or the sill gives, you have decay. And if you find a continuous caulk bead along the bottom inside, cut it out. That is the most useful 10 minutes you can spend on an old steel building. Now the 6th leak. It is not water, it is a sentence. Seal it up tight. I will be careful here because this is where a lesser telling turns into a conspiracy, and there is not one. The Navy sold those huts off in 1946. Strand Steel put out a release listing more than 250 uses people had found for them. Sherwin-Williams sold a paint line for coating the shells. What the sale did not include was the erection and maintenance manual. They sold the building. They did not sell the book. 100,000 American families received a machine engineered to breathe, with nothing on it saying so, and every one of them did the reasonable thing and shut it tight for winter. You would think somebody would have said something. Nobody did. Then the country got the message a second time, louder. The oil embargo hit, and Congress passed the Energy Conservation and Production Act of 1976, creating the Weatherization Assistance Program, then the National Energy Conservation Policy Act of 1978. A generation was told correctly that the air leaking out of their buildings was costing them money. Caulk the gaps, plug the drafts, seal the envelope. Every word of that was true about heat. Not one word of it was said about water. And the market did what markets do: sealant, caulk, foam, weather strip, elastomeric coating, a whole trade selling you a tube of the answer in every hardware store in the country. There was money in you tightening a building. There has never been a dollar in you opening a vent, because a louver costs $9, lasts 50 years, and nobody has to come back. Not a conspiracy, neighbor, just how markets work. The knowledge did not die in a courthouse. It died in a warehouse full of caulk guns. Now the one I am not proud of. I was 13, and Eli had a surplus hut on the bench above the barn, and it whistled in November. So I got up there with a caulk gun, sealed the ridge seam end to end, then screwed both gable louvers shut because I wanted him to see I had been useful. He saw it in April when the smell came up. We pulled the workbench off the north wall, and the bottom foot of that arch was scaled orange, and the sill under it was soft enough to take a thumb. He did not yell. He never yelled. He handed me the screwdriver and said, "You did not keep the winter out, boy. You kept it in." Then the other thing he always said, "Now you know. I am not your building inspector. Your county has codes. Your insurer has opinions. And if your building came with a manual, that manual outranks me. What I am handing you, friend, is the pattern a competent builder carried in his head before there were manuals to carry it for him. Keep the rain out at the fasteners and the ridge where the sky actually gets in. Then stop. Everywhere else, your job is to let it dry. Poly under the slab or air under the floor. Foam adhered to the metal or bare metal, but never a blanket with dead air behind it. Open the louvers, vent the ridge, and leave the bottom open so whatever condenses has a road out. Seal the water, vent the vapor. 2 different jobs, and the 6th leak is the sentence that told you they were one. This was never about huts. A building that dries itself needs nobody. No inspection, no service contract, no dehumidifier costing $140 a year on your meter, no remediation company in a white van. It handles its own water the way an arch handles its own weight by shape and physics without asking permission. That is the difference between a man who owns his own roof and a man who rents his safety by the month. Your great-grandfather set his sills on stone, cut vents in his gables, and left his crawl space open in summer, with no building science to justify any of it. He had geometry, and geometry was free, and it never needed replacing. That is not nostalgia, that is sovereignty. Go back to Harlan Beck with the flashlight, pointing at the bottom 2 feet. He is not pointing at a failure of steel. That steel was fine. He is pointing at 11 years of careful, well-intentioned work aimed at the wrong enemy. The storm never got in. The winter never got in. Harlan let the water in himself, one breath at a time, and sealed the door behind it. That is not on him, friend. They were good at selling, and nobody was selling the other half. That building could have stood 100 years. It stood 11 because a good man was handed a machine and never handed the manual. You do not have to fix all of it this week. Do one thing. This Saturday, walk out to whatever steel you own, a shop, a shed, a carport, a barn, at first light before the sun warms it. Put your hand flat on the inside of the roof. If it comes away wet, you have found it. Then look low at the bottom 2 feet and see where the rust lives. 15 minutes, and it tells you more than a paid inspection. Tell me down below, did your grandparents have a Quonset hut, an arch shed, a surplus building of any kind on the place? Is it still standing, or did it go soft at the floor? The one that gets the most stories is the one I go deep on next. Next time, the 1945 foundation method that outlasted concrete and the post-war code revision that made sure you would never see it poured again. Keep the old ways, they kept us.